Hey guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today we're doing another recent reads, but all of the books I'm going to be talking about, these are books that have been recently released within like the last few months. So these are all new releases and they are all mystery or thriller or a combination of the two. So if you've actually paid attention to my thumbnail and have looked at the books that I'm going to be talking about, you can probably guess which book I really enjoyed because the other ones I did not enjoy as much as I wanted to, and I actually have a DNF in here. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the two arcs that I recently finished. The first one we're gonna talk about is House of Glass by Sarah Pekkanen. So in this one, we are following this family who has recently experienced a tragedy in their home. So they had a nanny that was working for them, and one day the nanny falls to her death after falling from the third-story window. And unfortunately, their young daughter Rose, I can't remember what age she was, maybe around like 10 or a little younger, she actually witnessed the death of the nanny. So the parents of Rose, they are actually in the middle of a divorce, and that brings in our main character, Stella. She is a best interest attorney, so she goes in when people are getting divorced and she looks into the children and she looks into the family and she determines which parent should have custody of the child. So that is what Stella is doing with Rose and her parents. So Stella is looking into Rose, she's looking into the father, the mother, the grandmother, anybody that's associated with this family that can give her more insight into who Rose should live with. While she's looking into them, she realized there may be more to this nanny's death, and she thinks that Rose may have played a part in this nanny's death. I rated this one 3 stars. A lot of people have been really enjoying this one, and this one just fell a little flat for me. I really like the idea around Rose being maybe a little bit more sinister and maybe playing a part in this nanny's death. I just really think like that whole plot line could have gone a lot farther than it did. I also really liked how this family was like keeping secrets. You really didn't know who you could trust. You didn't know if you could trust the parents. They also have a grandmother that lives with them. And then of course we have Rose. You didn't really know who you could trust or their motivations and really what happened to this nanny. So I liked everything surrounding that. But like I said, I just really think it could have gone farther, especially when we have these stories where we're saying that a kid could be evil or really be the problem. And then there was also like this side plot with Stella. So when Stella was younger, her mother was like a drug addict and she ended up dying, but there was always like this mystery around her mother's death. And so throughout the story, Stella has decided that she now wants to look into what really happened to her mother back then. And so every so often we're going back into the past and what Stella experienced while living with her mother and her like little side investigation into what happened to her mother. Some people might actually really like that. It also makes more sense to why Stella is like so wrapped up in her current case with like Rose and her family. But every time we started getting those flashbacks or she started talking about, you know, her own mother, it just kept taking me out of the main story. And I just did not really like that. So ultimately, I just gave this one 3 stars. I thought it was fine, but if it sounds interesting to you guys, I would definitely pick it up because so many other people have enjoyed it. The next arc that I have is Dear Hanna by Zoya Stage. I hope I'm saying this author's name correctly, but you guys might be familiar with this author because a few years ago, she wrote the story Baby Teeth, and Dear Hanna is actually the sequel to Baby Teeth. Now, I was not the biggest fan of Baby Teeth. Again, it revolves around a child. Her name is Hanna, and Hanna and her mother did not have like the best relationship. Her mother actually thought that Hanna was a little evil, and Hanna was like secretly doing things to like harm her mother. And then the father obviously didn't really see or believe any of the things that this mother was telling him that was going on in regards to Hanna. With that story, there was like this thing that happened with Hanna that I wished we would have delved deeper into, but instead it didn't really go in the direction that I wanted it to go in. And I just think that more could have happened. Like, she could have been more sinister. I don't know. I just think more could have happened. I was hesitant to pick up this one because I didn't necessarily like baby teeth. I know so many people did, but I just was not a fan of that. But it was like a read now option on NetGalley. That's where I got both of the arcs from. And so I was like, let me just go ahead and give it a try. I might like it more. That was not the case. So in this new one, Dear Hanna, Hanna is all grown up. She's in like her early 20s. At the beginning of the story, she was living with her parents, but she really wanted to leave and go on her own. So she found the first guy that she thought she could make some kind of life with. He was way older than her. He already had a daughter. His wife had like recently passed away or something like that. And so Hanna decides that this is her ticket out of her parents' house. And so she ends up getting married and everything's fine for her. She's in this marriage that she somewhat likes the guy that she got married to, and she really enjoys helping raise her stepdaughter Joelle, who is in high school. She really likes her job as a phlebotomist, so everything's going well. All of a sudden, there is a situation that happens with her stepdaughter Joelle that just throws everything out of whack. And so this perfect life that Hanna has envisioned for herself and has made for herself is now being disrupted by this situation with Joelle. And so because of that, all of these like feelings in her mental state is now being disrupted. And so she's having all of these bad thoughts again. And now she's trying to come up with plans to fix this situation with Joelle. And so throughout the story, why the story is called Dear Hanna is because she is writing letters to her younger brother Goose. And in these letters, she's explaining to Goose, you know, what's going on at home and all of these solutions that she's kind of trying to come up with to fix this problem. I gave this one 2 stars. I do not think Baby Teeth needed a sequel. I don't think Hanna being older, everything that happened in this book, I don't think it adds anything to her character whatsoever. There were moments where I was intrigued in the story. I did like the letters back and forth that she was sending to her brother Goose. I did like the times where we were like in her thoughts and she was like trying to come up with like these different plans. I liked it to a certain extent, but this book I think could have benefited from another like POV something, because I was getting tired of being in her head all the time. And there were certain moments where I thought the pacing was kind of slow, just because we were just getting her thoughts and her trying to figure out what she was going to do about the situation. And ultimately, like the ending, there was like this really big reveal you would probably be able to figure out. I kind of knew where it was going. I just thought the whole story was not needed. Now, if you were somebody that really enjoyed Baby Teeth, then maybe you should pick this up. Like, if you really enjoy the character of Hanna and you are interested to see what happens when she is all grown, by all means, this may be the book for you. But if you are like me and you did not like Baby Teeth, this is not gonna make you like it, and this is not gonna make you like Hanna and her story. So yeah, I gave this 2 stars. Overall, I mean, I thought the book was fine, but it's just it's not a memorable story for me, and it did nothing to increase my like for Hanna or for that other book. So yeah, 2 stars. So then the next book that I have here is Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. And unfortunately, the best thing about this book is the presentation and how it looks like an actual VHS tape. But this one follows 3 main characters. So we have siblings, Beth, who is the oldest, Nicole, who is the middle one, and then Brian, who is the youngest. So Beth has been the one that has stayed at home and was taking care of their mother. I believe she has recently died of cancer, but before their mother died, she had whispered to Beth and was like, hey, your father didn't disappear, and don't trust blank. Before we got the name, her mother had died. And so Beth is like holding on to the secret, and we learn that I think like 7 or 8 years prior, their father disappeared and no one ever figured out what exactly happened. Now, when he first disappeared, I think like a couple of weeks later, like his car was found. So the police didn't think like any foul play happened. They think that he just took off and just like left the family. And so for all these years, these siblings did not know what happened. And so, like I said, Beth is like holding on to this and really taking it in. And so Nicole and Michael show up and they are making preparations for their mother's funeral. They're also in the process of trying to figure out what to do with the house. And so while they're kind of going through like all of their childhood things and their mother's things, they come across some VHS tapes. And these tapes were like home movies from when they were younger. They pop one in, and on one of the tapes, they discover something about their father that could have played into his disappearance. And so throughout the book, we're trying to figure out what happened to their missing father, Brian. I gave this book 2 stars, and I think that was being very, very generous. This book, let me check, I think is less than like 300 pages. It's like barely 250 pages, and this felt so long. I listened to this one on audio, and it felt like I was listening to this forever. Not much really happened in this. We are literally just following each of these siblings, and we get a POV from each of them. And now in this book, I don't think this needed to be multiple POVs, because we're also getting flashbacks of the mother in regards to what happened back then to the father. So I just don't think we needed POVs from each of the siblings. And nothing like much happened within each of their POV. I don't know, this story just felt so long. It probably could have just been a novella. And then like the ending of the story was so underwhelming for me. I did not guess what happened. I think a lot of people probably can guess what happened with the story. When we got the reveal to what happened to the father, I was just like, yeah, right. Because I wanted it to be anything other than what it was. And once we got that reveal, I was like, I've read this before. I've seen this sort of ending before, and I was very, very disappointed with it. Some people have been really enjoying this one. If you are somebody that has enjoyed this author's previous books, you may enjoy this one. I have not read anything else from this author. After reading this, I don't necessarily want to, but people have said that if I wanted to pick up something from her again to try something else out, then her best book was The Perfect Marriage. You guys let me know your thoughts down below on that. After reading this, I can just honestly say I'm not in a rush to pick up anything else from this author because I did not enjoy this. The next book that I have here is Nightwatching by Tracy Sierra. This is the book that I unfortunately DNF'd, and I DNF'd it not even halfway through. I think technically it was only like 19%. So it was chapter 14 at page 115 is where I stopped with this one. And it's really unfortunate because after I had seen other people's reviews of this, I did try to change my expectations on what this was going to be. So we're following this woman who I don't think was ever named in this book, but we're following this woman. She wakes up in the middle of the night to an intruder in her house. So then she grabs her 2 young kids. It was like a young girl and a young boy, and they were hiding in the house. That was literally as far as I got in this before I had to put it down. But during that time, during these 115 pages, we were getting like these random flashbacks between her and like her husband. We also don't know where he was at. We were learning that she didn't get along with like her father-in-law. So yeah, I had to put this down because I was extremely bored. This was extremely slow. I knew that it was going to be on the slower side, but I did not understand that it was going to be that slow. And it was like almost every time where it felt like the action was trying to pick up, then we would go back and get some more flashbacks and I guess some background information into this unnamed woman. I really don't know what this was trying to do. Maybe had I stuck with it, I would have been able to figure that out, but yeah, I couldn't do that. What I think should have happened, and you guys who have read this and who have enjoyed this, please let me know. But what I really think should have happened was that I think we should have got some background information first about this woman and her family before we just got dumped into like the middle of this like home invasion. I think if we would have gotten some background information first, it would have made me care more about this character, the situation that she is finding herself in. I would have understood maybe some of the action she was or was not taking in this situation. But because it kind of like started off right when this invasion was happening, and then we were interrupting the action of the story to then go back and get background about her, I didn't care. I did not like how this was structured at all. And maybe, like I said, if it was structured a little bit differently, I would have at least been able to stick it out through the end. But unfortunately, I had to DNF this one, and I was hoping that this was going to be something that I was going to at least think was okay, especially after I had changed my expectations, but unfortunately that just was not the case. So the last book, and we can already guess, I really enjoyed this one. This was one of my most anticipated reads for this year. What Have You Done by Sherry Lapina. So in this one, we are following this man, I think his name was like Ralph. We're following this man and he is going out to his field. This takes place in like this small town in Vermont. He like works on a farm, but he's out in his field and he comes across this naked young high school student who has been brutally murdered. And so the story quickly starts off from there, where we are trying to find out what happened to this girl, how she ended up in this field, and we are following all the people that were a part of this girl's life. Like I said, I really enjoyed this one. I gave this 4 stars. So far, all of the books that I have read from Sherry Lapina, even though I sit up here and I talk about how much I really enjoyed them, I never really give them 5 stars because I feel that the twist or like the big reveals are always predictable, but I enjoy the journey getting there. In this one, it's the same. I could tell from a mile away what was going on, and I actually guessed the reason why, but the journey getting to that point was very fun. This book has a ton of characters. I think her books always have a ton of characters just because they're on like the more of the domestic thriller side. And so we're usually following small town, small neighborhood, and we're following all of the characters within that small town or neighborhood. And this is the same. So we are following like this dead girl's best friends, her boyfriend, her mother, her like boyfriend's parents, her teachers, her co-workers, everybody that could have been wrapped up in this girl's murder. It is a ton of characters. I actually enjoyed that, and I enjoyed that it is so many characters because I like how, even though I could guess what happened, I like how Sherry Lapina is able to make me second guess whether or not I'm right and what actually happened. And there are so many times in this book where I questioned whether or not I was right. So I liked a lot of characters. I know that does not work for a lot of people. A lot of people don't like to follow a ton of characters. So that might not be a thing for you for this one. I did not really care for like the paranormal aspect in this. There was something kind of like paranormal going on, and I don't think this book needed it. I think if you took that out, you would have had the same story. Again, that may work for some people, it may not work for others. This is the first time that I've seen her do something like that. I'm not sure. There are still a few other books that I have not read from her, so I'm not sure if she plays around with that in her other books, but I don't think that it was needed in this one. Everything else I really enjoyed. Now, this is a story that works where you can just be dropped right into the action and find out stuff later. And all of her books really work that way for me, where it only takes her about a chapter or two before, you know, you're taking off running and trying to figure out what is going on. So the pacing in this I really liked. I only took like a couple of sittings in order to finish this. I was hooked from start to finish. I liked the little reveals that we were getting along the way. I just really enjoyed this one. If this sounds good and everything that I have mentioned, like the fast pace, you know, the ton of characters, I mean, even though it's predictable, maybe you won't guess what happened, but I do think that you will be second guessing your decision at some point in this book. I just really enjoyed this one. I'm happy that this was a book that I enjoyed out of the other ones. So yeah, if you are thinking about picking this one up, I definitely would. So that is all that I have for you guys. If you have read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts down below, but I will see you guys next time. Bye.